On today's inaugural episode of the Going Commando Podcast, we get Washington Commander fans ready for the start of the season. We will look at every position group on this team with an in-depth analysis, go through the entire 2022 schedule and give our predictions, as well as some other topics sprinkled in between. You're going to want to stick around, so without further ado, let's get this show started. Welcome to Going Commando, a Washington Commanders podcast. The 2022 NFL season is finally upon us, and so is episode 1 of our Going Commando podcast. My name is Clark. I'm joined with Chris and Tom. 3 lifelong Washington football fans have been through thick and thin, the highs, well, not too many, and the many, many lows. We're all diehard fans of this team, and we're here to give you our takes, our opinions on this football team all season long. So just taking a look at this Washington Commanders team, going 0-3 in the preseason, 7-10 last year, now headed into Ron Rivera's 3rd year at the helm of this franchise. And I think this is going to be a telling year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We look at what he did in Carolina. You win a Coach of the Year. That's certainly no small thing. Although, might I remind you, Jason Garrett has won a Coach of the Year, so maybe a little bit of an easy path to it there. But overall, I can't complain too much. I mean, they've made smart moves. They've been put in a horrible situation at times, and overall, you take the pluses with the minuses with this team, and we're fans, so we have to. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks, Clark. Thanks, Tom. I think honestly that as a fan, I'm just hoping for something a little different. I mean, I think with this kind of is a crucial year for Ron Rivera. I mean, year 3. I just think that the fans really kind of, myself, I need to see something different this year. I mean, I know we'll probably get into it a little bit more, but I'm just hoping for not another just kind of textbook veteran retread season that we seem to have so many of.
It seems to be somewhat of a trend at times, with this team. But, I think they've, out of all the years, there's been some additions, a few subtractions as well, but I would like to think that we're building something decent. I mean, it seems that this team is really, maybe focused a bit more on offense this offseason. The defense was the focus for Ron Rivera in Carolina. It was the focus of this team last year, or rather in 2020,
which is ironic.
Which is ironic considering how things turned out last year. But, Scott Turner might actually have some weapons this year, and I think it's going to be big for, him proving himself as well.
No,
I hope so.
I hope so too, man. I mean, you look at this offense, and I think in preseason, you try not to judge too hard, but I mean, thinking back to that first preseason game, I was excited to watch Howell play, but as I started to watch the game, I started to notice something that was kind of interesting to me, which is that we had no passing touchdowns in our first preseason game. And as a fan, I don't know about you guys, that's very disheartening to me. I love running the football just as much as anybody else does. I wish we had more of a steady backfield, but if this team just can't, throw the ball into the end zone like every other freaking team in the NFL, then what are we doing here, guys? Come on.
Yeah, but
Carson didn't have a touchdown all preseason, I believe.
No, he did not.
No, he didn't. And if I'm not mistaken, the only people to have passing touchdowns is Taylor Heineke had one in the second preseason game.
Right.
And then Sam Howell, to a name which we'll get to later, Bonifon, had a touchdown in this most recent preseason game. So 2 touchdowns passing over 3 games. I mean, shit. We saw a Pittsburgh Steelers rookie throw for the exact same amount of touchdowns in his first preseason game. So
Well, I mean, it's not like we're some, historically quarterback, gifted team, I will say. We
I mean,
haven't
the
really had
offense,
haven't had a guy since Kirk Cousins really to throw the ball down the field, which is kind of saying something.
right?
I mean, it's horrible that the best quarterback that I can say in my lifetime for my team was Kirk Cousins, and that's not an indictment on Kirk Cousins. It's an indictment on the quarterbacks who we've had in the team.
Yeah,
So,
we're not an anti-Kirk Cousins podcast. I'll just say, he
absolutely.
definitely.
So yeah, more of a Todd Collins, kind of podcast.
I mean,
I gotta be honest with you.
he
I'm
brings
more of a
back.
Jason Campbell guy myself.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm actually kind of more
Colt
of a
McCoy also always has a place in my heart.
Colt McCoy's his Dallas performances for us must be mentioned. Absolutely.
It's what Heineke, we hope a Heineke can truly aspire to be and become one day.
Heineke has a bit of a legend growing for himself. And, I'm glad that he's still sticking around with the team. Might not be the same sentiment for one of our podcast members here, but that's a story for another day. But in terms of a passing offense for this game, guys, this can kind of take us into one of our biggest topics, of course, which is this quarterback room. So, obviously Carson Wentz being brought into this program, it was one of the bigger offseason moves in the entire NFL, with him being out of Indy in 1 year, shipped over to Washington. What do you guys think? I mean, it's been a topic probably every beat reporter Washington since the day he got traded. Can this guy really be a franchise guy? I mean, it seems that the team's certainly trying to provide him with a lot of good weapons, but at the end of the day, it's Carson Wentz, and he's kind of a guy with not the best track record.
Well, I think you look at this team, and we've talked to Indianapolis Colts fan, you and I, Clark, and they kind of agree with us here that this might be the best receiving core he's worked with, at least since Philadelphia, if not ever in his career. And you hope that he continues to keep the interceptions down and maybe add some more touchdowns and some more yards. But this is just a make or break season for him. I mean, we're paying him $35-something million. He's a guy that has at one point been labeled an MVP caliber player at least once in his career, if not, a guy that could reach that again. And you hope for your guy to succeed. But as you know, Clark, I'm a very realistic fan over here. I won't, give it to you lightly because it's my team. I honestly think Carson Wentz is going to be, keeping his safety valves of Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson well fed. And the question at that point just becomes, do they catch the ball? Do they get the yards? Do they make the plays that we need to get this team over the hump?
Hey, okay, I no disrespect to, Carson Wentz or, our receiving core there, but, we've got some playmakers, but, in my eyes, the question isn't whether or not Terry's going to get his. I think it's whether or not we're going to have a quarterback that's going to be making the plays in crunch time when we need him to.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if Carson really is got like the clutch like X factor that, I mean, even Heineke, I feel like has a little bit more of that like X factor than, because I don't know. I feel like Carson was just pretty lackluster in preseason. And, I know his numbers, looked kind of, looked decent, I guess, last year. Clearly Indianapolis didn't want him. But, I'm hopeful. I do, think about the like QB room, like notable departures from last year. Obviously Fitzmagic, was kind of over before it even got started here.
Never got a chance.
Can we call him a notable departure?
I guess I mean, I would, it's a departure. I mean, it depends on how you define notable.
Departure. You're right.
Kyle Allen, you don't have, good old Kyle Allen here anymore. Kind of, in the reins is kind of like some insurance
The
as well.
trusty
So,
Ron Rivera guy.
Admittedly, though, I think the group as a whole is definitely upgraded. Do I think Carson Wentz is honestly that much better than Heineke? I mean, from a pure arm strength perspective, yes. From a decision-making perspective, they might both be in the same boat, could be better. From a mobility standpoint, honestly, Heineke probably gets the nod. from just an overall athlete perspective, I mean, maybe Carson Wentz gets the nod. I'm not arguing for a quarterback battle here. I think that's firmly Carson's job to lose at this point in the season, and that's a whole nother discussion. Like if Carson were to falter, would duties automatically go to Heineke, or would he be leapfrogged by Howe? I think that has to depend on where we would be at in the season at that time, and if we still had a chance at a playoff run at the time or not. But overall, I'm excited to see if Carson Wentz is legit or if he's just yet another, kind of like I mentioned earlier, just another veteran that is past his prime that Washington and Danny kicked the tires on and hope for the best on. So I hope that's not the case.
All I'm saying is 2020 playoff game, Heineke Magic, even in a loss, possibly arguably a top 10 moment of the last 20 years for this franchise. So
right, that's what I'm saying. He has an X factor that I don't know if Carson has, like, albeit, Heineke has his weaknesses. I mean, I'm definitely a pro Heineke guy here for sure. But I'm not saying he should start, but
I mean, he's just a good
I think
story.
He just got that extra factor.
He's a likable guy. He's a good story. I mean, he was
Can we cut the crap?
Okay.
Can we cut the crap here? Okay. Listen.
Yeah, let's hear the Heineke FUD.
I watched let me just state this right now for the fans of this podcast very quickly. The Heineken went stale a long time ago. Okay.
Okay.
We give a man credit. We give a man credit for losing a game to Tom Brady where he made it look close
against Tom Brady. Man, who else has done that? Go toe to toe with the GOAT.
A little man named Nick Foles. Now, if you want Big Dick Nick on your team, I will have a different discussion with you. However, Taylor Heineke, for me, is not a guy that we should have backing up our quarterback. I mean, you look at the pure stat line of this man. Last year, as a full-time starter, 20 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. That is Jameis Winston-esque. Hey, that is almost 1 for 1.
And Jameis Winston's, starting QB in the league right now. All I'm saying.
Jameis Winston wasn't an undrafted guy who had to make his way through the USFL and XFL. I forget if he was in that league or not. But he's such I just can't understand how we think that an Old Dominion quarterback is going to be our guy. I broke this down for you with Howell and Heineke. I'll let you get into it in a second, Clark. But it is unbelievable to me. Unbelievable that you guys would think Heineke is over Howell.
So if anything, you compare him to Jameis Winston, a guy who was the number 1 pick, and his stats are similar as an undrafted 6-foot-tall QB out of Old Dominion. I mean, I think the guy's done pretty well for himself. I think he's earned his way in the NFL. I mean, by the way, you're treating him like he's Kerry Collins or something, or maybe even worse than that. I mean,
as far as I'm concerned, he's won us about as many games as Kerry Collins has. I mean, you go back to those games from last year. How many of them did he truly win for us? Exactly. You can't think of it because you don't realize how good our defense played in our wins. How many times – think about the Falcons win, right? That was not because of Taylor Heineke. That was because J.D. McKissick made a play. That was not Heineke.
Hey, man, somebody's got to get him the ball.
And you don't think Sam Howell can do it just as well?
And I'm not saying anything about Sam Howell. I think the kid's got a bright future. But I think it's to say that Heineke is a player that doesn't belong on a roster, I think is a bit out there, Tom. It's a bit out there.
Heineke belongs on this team. He knows this offense. Like I'm not like I said, I'm not arguing that Heineke could start.
Minuses if you want.
He did come back and beat Tom the next year, last season, admittedly. Not saying that we were good last year because we weren't. But I think Heineke's a good guy. I'm not sure if I see him on the team past this season, unfortunately, because I do like the guy. I think the only scenario where you see Heineke even on this team after this season is if if Wentz performs very poorly. Because I think, say Wentz performs super well, we get rid of him after this year. We probably end up going with Howell as the starter, but I see them kind of wanting that insurance in Heineke still, if they're able to sign him. And that's if they're able to sign him to, another like reasonable backup deal. I don't know how much interest there would be on the open market for him.
Someone's gonna
Apparently
pay him.
not enough, according to Tom.
Someone's gonna
Tell
pay
you
him.
what, whoever pays him that's not named the Washington Commanders, I will laugh at your face when I see you in person. I promise you, there will not be a Super Bowl winning team with the name Taylor Heineke on it. I will guarantee that to you.
And of course, after talking about the quarterbacks, quick shout out to Steven Montez. Anyways, as we go forward with the rest of this podcast, we're going to now switch things over to the running back room, a room that should be one of Washington's strongest position groups, but obviously some big news coming out of DC over the last couple of days with Brian Robinson being hospitalized in an attempted carjacking, which, prayers up to him. Apparently he's in good shape right now after the carjacking, but man, I mean, is that a more Washington football thing that you've heard?
Yeah, prayers up for B Rob. Also shout out Steven Montez, Montez for MVP.
Facts.
But yeah, no, that's a real bummer. I mean, obviously we all hope that, he has a full recovery, and glad to hear that he's, doesn't sound life threatening or anything, but that is a real bummer because this RB room was about to have so much more just versatility to it. I would, this offense, the running offense was going to look different from last year. And now I'm worried. I'm worried it's just going to look exactly like it was last year. Not that I thought it was terrible, but this, B-Rob added a whole nother element to this game. You can plug in a more hard-nosed kind of guy. Gibson is honestly jack of all trades. And of course, like, McKissick, being the more receiving back, but still can take, carries as well. So like I was really excited for the running back room, and now it's I just hope we're not too predictable without B-Rob, because I think we're lucky if we even get him back this season at all.
Well, let me tell you what I gotta say. First off, prayers up to Brian Robinson. Stay out of Northeast if you can. It's dangerous as hell, and you just figured that out. Second off, I think the two suspects that they should be looking at are Reggie Bonifant and Antonio Gibson. Now, the reason I say this is, as Commanders fans, we all very well know that Antonio Gibson was going to lose that starting spot to Brian Robinson. I mean, it was starting in preseason. He was taking second team snaps. Hell, they even had him fielding kicks and punts. So a little suspicious after the last game of preseason, And then Reggie Bonifant, man. I mean, we watched the game the other day, Clark, and I was texting you about this. Reggie Bonifant looked like he was trying his hardest and just couldn't get anything out of it. I mean, we gave him, I think, 4 rushes in the first 2 drives, and he had gotten all of about 3 yards with it. And I did now obviously, watch the full game. There was another point in which Reggie Bonifant was doing pass pro. The linebacker for the Ravens just blasted right through him, got straight to the quarterback. So let me tell you what, they said 2 15-year-olds. I think it was a few 5'11" guys who were suspect of losing their jobs over this. Now, one name that I think you were interested in bringing up for the running backs, Clark, was Jarrett Patterson. Now, obviously, my opinions on him. I love him. He's a DC kid. I believe he went to DeMatha with Chase Young.
That's right.
And I personally love him. He got on the field this preseason, made a lot of plays, got a good amount of yards out of it. So,
I mean, I think he's a guy that now might find himself making this roster after the recent Brian Robinson news. I mean, he barely made the roster last year. It was a good story. Chase Young was lobbying for this guy to be signed. He had the 8 touchdown game when he was at Buffalo in college. I mean, he's a great story, but he,
USA, baby.
I just don't quite see how he fits into, our offense. He's more of a between the tackles runner, but he just doesn't have the great NFL size. You'd like to see guys like that maybe be more effective in the passing game, but that's just not the way that he plays. But I think that he's going to get a spot. Your boy Reggie Bonifon, say what you will about him or what involvement he may or may not have had, of course, all jokes, but I don't know that I think he's going to be the odd man out because obviously Gibson, while they've been trying to teach him a bit of a lesson, his spot is solid. JD McKissick, arguably best pass catching running back in the game. And then Jonathan Williams, another guy that I think has kind of shown some flashes and maybe made a case for himself to make this team. So I don't know. I think Bonifon's the odd man out, but I could also understand somebody saying Patterson.
I think Bonifon was the odd man out of this group before anything even happened to Brian Robinson. And I mean, I don't know too much about the guy, but he's not making this team. I was honestly kind of surprised, and to preface, I do like Jarrett Patterson. I was kind of surprised he made the team last year over Jonathan Williams. I think, especially just from what I've seen in preseason here, I know he's a little banged up, so I guess it could go either way. But I think with this B-Rob news, I think Jonathan Williams is likely your third back, just because he can, I feel like, kind of do, what fill that role a little bit better than what Jarrett Patterson could do in a Brian Robinson role. Not that does that mean Jonathan Williams is all of a sudden your RB1? That's not the case. It's going to go back to Gibby. But let's just hope he can hold on to the football. And yeah, it's a shame because this offense was going to be a lot more, just a lot different from last year with the B-Rob edition.
Yeah, hope you hear that, folks. Jonathan Williams skyrocketing all fantasy boards right now, so keep that in mind. No, but I do see what you mean. A lot of questions with this running back group, especially now. Who's going to kind of fill that void? Are they going to give all the touches to Gibson like it was in the last couple of years without Robinson, or is he still not trusted to kind of be like the bell cow?
It's also going to have like a ripple effect on the rest of the roster now, because I think even potentially before Brian Robinson got attacked, I think even before that there was still a possibility of them keeping four backs, just because I don't know how serious they were about exposing Antonio Gibson to all this special teams work. I mean, maybe kick returner, but all this on the other special teams is like a blocker or whatnot. I don't know how much they were really wanting to expose him to that. So I think there was even a potential for a fourth RB spot on the roster. Now with B-Rob gone, I don't think that's the case. So that might free up a spot like somewhere else on the roster that otherwise was going to be allocated there. So it could honestly have a ripple effect beyond just this room.
Well, this is a point that I had made to Clark at one point, and it sounds a little crazy, but honestly, you could put Gibson back at receiver. It's not too early, or it's not too late. He's definitely, he hasn't lost his hands. He's still got a good size for the position. We could always use a good slot guy, a good 4 or 5. And, I think that receiving room is definitely a place that we should talk about next if we're talking about the Commanders.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point that you make because, when this guy came out of college, he was primarily a receiver in college, and he was kind of calling himself, whatever it was, the X factor,
the weapon,
the weapon, the offensive weapon. Right. So, maybe he is used in that kind of role. I mean, Scott Turner used Curtis Samuel like that in Carolina. Obviously, Curtis Samuel now healthy and looking to be a threat for this offense. Something else we can get into as well. But I would like that idea, but just I don't see it happening really right now, especially with the injury concerns. We don't know when Robinson is going to be healthy again. It was reported that he has a chance to play this season, but with something like that happening, you can't. It's not exactly something you can rush back from, I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, it just sucks. It honestly sucks. And this is the hard part about being a Commanders fan, is that you almost expect something like this to happen every year. We've had the naming issues for the past few years. We had the Kirk Cousins taking a franchise tag the year before that. We had the RG3 injury years. I mean, it just kind of feels like every season there's a new excuse for why we aren't doing well. And honestly, this could have a bigger impact on us than we even realize. I mean, a player gets shot in DC. What is that going to say to the free agents that might want to come here, but now are thinking about some 15-year-olds running up on them, trying to rob them and shooting them? What does this say to the rookies who are getting their first NFL job and are saying, well, you know what, I really don't want to go to DC. I saw what happened to the other rookies and how they were treated in that city.
Well, I mean, it's not to say that we were like some free agent hotspot to begin with. I mean,
absolutely,
there's a whole lot that we can get into on that aspect of it.
Josh Norman and Terrence Knighton, and you were not free agent hotspots? Come on.
Okay, no disrespect to Pot Roast, man. Like, he's a legend. He's an absolute legend. But you know what I'm saying. I mean, we weren't exactly, a Los Angeles or a Tampa Bay. But at the same time,
that's why you get guys like Carson Wentz as your quarterback.
Who would you rather have the money back from, Terrence Knighton or Albert Hainsworth?
Okay, Terrence Knighton,
give me Hainsworth back, because Terrence Knighton was just 1 year, and it was a good story because he was like high school teammates with Swaggy, Chris Baker at the time. So like that I had fun with that.
No, I think the real bank robber was Adam Archuleta. Deion
McNabb,
Sanders.
that's a pretty good one.
McNabb. We traded for McNabb, so it wasn't really his choice, but
it's your classic veteran retread though that we do.
Pretty classic veteran retread. There's been a lot of those over the years, man.
I mean,
Alex Smith, which obviously respect Alex Smith.
Is it bad if I was to say Deshaun?
Case Keenum.
Oof, God.
Yeah,
I think of Case Keenum in a Washington uniform. I just think of that.
That was pretty low.
That was bad.
Toughest player you've ever had to watch in a Commander's uniform or formerly Redskins uniform? I have an easy answer to start us off. Mark Sanchez.
That's a good one.
Took the words out of my mouth.
That I'll tell you what, the Sanchez coming to one of the greatest and most historic franchises in the NFL should have been bigger news. But
remember where you were when the Washington signed Mark Sanchez.
I mean, yeah, it was terrible. He came in, had a terrible game, and it was the last game of his career. I mean, it was just perfect.
True. Actually, I don't think he landed anywhere else after that.
He did not, actually. You were right.
We're better off than that. So there's that.
That's true.
But honestly, back to this receivers room, interesting that you bring up the whole Gibson thing. I mean, I guess, Gibson could be a more kind of like run heavy Curtis Samuel type potentially. But I mean, I think receiver room honestly is one of the strengths of this offense.
Absolutely.
Just because I think it's for the first time in a while, we have some good depth. Now, there are some notable departures that I actually am upset about. I was a big fan of DeAndre Carter. I thought he came in, stepped in, proved he actually could be a contributing receiver, let alone a kick returner, punt returner. You don't have Adam Humphries anymore, who I actually was open. I was actually open to bringing back because I really liked kind of what he brought to the table in terms of just being able to make that crucial possession catch.
He was good for that third down catch it was like clockwork. His death taxes and the Adam Humphries third down conversion every single game.
Right. I mean, hopefully, Dax Milne. I know Tom's a big Dax Milne guy. I know hopefully Dax Milne
Well, don't
can
spoil
fill
it
into
for
that.
the people. I want to get into it now, I guess, because you
Yeah,
brought it
let's
up.
get into Dax Milne. I mean, I know
Yeah.
you're big. Let's hope he can be
One
the next
name.
Adam Humphries.
If you take one name away from this podcast today, and you take one name away from Redskins, Commanders preseason, take Dax Milne. Now I'll hear people on the internet say he doesn't have that dog in him. I'll tell you what. Just because he's not touching his mom's friends, like his best friend from BYU, doesn't mean that he isn't catching some pure fire. Okay? We're talking about a guy, BYU wide receiver. How many of those can you name? Exactly. You're talking about a guy who lit up the aerial attack for the Commanders in preseason, was our number one guy in terms of receiving yards, and I believe in receptions following week 2 and 3. This is a guy who, if I was in that coach's room and they were doing cut downs, they asked me, who's on the border, but we're going to keep Dax Milne. Absolutely great performances. I believe he had 84 yards after the second week of preseason, which with a team that did not do a lot of throwing and did not have any passing touchdowns until week 2, it's a big story.
It's not bad. No, I agree. I mean, I think Dax Milne has a place on this team. I think he is, I think honestly you could probably consider him a lock at this point just because it seems like he's going to be your punt returner. I don't know if he'll be your kick returner at this point. But I think he can fill that Adam Humphries-esque type kind of role. I think, there just isn't enough guys that have the versatility that he has to play all the receiver positions. So I think that is going for him as well, his versatility as well. So I think he's like that. He's that 5th or 6th receiver. Probably 6th, arguably 5th, just because, you could say De'Ami Brown has had a very poor preseason, and that Dax is, arguably looked better.
For sure
doesn't have the speed necessarily, I guess, that De'Ami has. But I mean, if you look at the room, obviously Terry is your lock, your captain. Love me some Terry McLaurin. Jahan, your number 2, I guess you could say Curtis Samuel, but we'll put Jahan for now. Curtis Samuel. And then honestly, Cam Sims is probably your number 4.
Let's go.
Who, I know this is definitely a pro Cam Sims group here.
Absolutely.
And he's obviously a roster lock, hell of a touchdown catch after basically getting concussed. After legitimately getting concussed, confirmed getting concussed in that game. They let him back in somehow and came down with that ball from your boy Heineke, Tom.
Let's not forget Cam Sims is also the legal guardian of Trayvon Diggs after that insane touchdown catch he had on him
friend
last year.
Trayvon.
Let me also add that he was facetiously saying my boy Heineke. Okay. That must be known.
That's his boy, man. That's his quarterback.
He got him concussed. He got him the TD. I mean, so yeah. Any other thoughts on the wide receiver room?
I'm gonna kind of want to talk about Dotson because we sit here and talk about this, all this talk about Dax Milne and what he's done, but let's not forget that this was our 1st round pick this year. For a team that maybe receiver wasn't viewed as the most pressing need, well, I think it certainly needed to be addressed. And, we signed Curtis Samuel to kind of be another guy in this offense, just was plagued with injuries. But this is our 1st round pick we're talking about. And, with limited snaps and plays, we're not really sure what to expect of the guy. So I really think that he's going to be one of the bigger storylines, and it's kind of gone under the radar as well.
Well, you look at his stat line from this preseason, 2 receptions for 23 yards against Kansas City being his biggest game. And you see that he didn't play against Baltimore. I mean, it seems like this is a guy that they're really trying to, push towards being the number 2, possibly number 1 guy in the future, maybe if McLaurin doesn't resign with us after those 3 years. And, I'm comfortable with it. I think everything you heard out of the draft, I mean, what's funny, Clark, and Chris, for you on this too. I was rewatching, the preview for the Commanders season this year. And Jahan Dotson's biggest thing, which they mentioned during the draft, was his hands. And I think we haven't really seen him have any issues with drops recently, which when you think back, Clark, do you remember who our last number 1 receiver was, our last first-round receiver before Jahan Dotson?
He who shall not be named.
I mean, he should be named because he's important. He's a trivia question for you right now, but the answer, of course, for everyone listening who they're screaming at their telephone thinking about is Josh Doxson. Now, what was Josh Doxson?
Eerily similar in name.
Exactly. Right?
Let's hope he's also not a bust.
But what was Josh Doxson's biggest issue?
Is that he was bad?
His hands. He would drop open passes. So it's a refreshing change of pace to see a guy whose biggest issue isn't his hands.
It's true, but
dude, come on! I think Doxson still is in the CFL or something now. Come on.
You can check the tape on that, man.
See you later, fella.
He's a free agent, so maybe a reunion's in order.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of. He's probably got every team blowing up his phone. Again, no disrespect to Josh Doxson. I got nothing against the guy personally, but
fun bit of trivia here for you guys, really quickly. I'm curious to see how close you guys will get. If you were to guess how many receiving yards in his career Josh Doxson finished with, I'll give you a quick overview of his career. 2016 to 18 with the now Commanders, 2019 with the Vikings, 2020 with the Jets, and 2021 with the Cardinals in offseason or as a practice squad member. How many receiving yards do you think he had in his career?
I'm gonna go he had 1,800.
That seems high.
What do you got, Chris? What do you think?
I was gonna say 800. I feel like 800. I feel like he was used sparingly.
I will tell you right now that Chris is the closer one. It is 1,100 yards. Fun fact for you.
Just trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, man.
Last time Terry McLaurin was at under 1,100 yards was the first or second week of the 2020 season.
Just goes to show you, man.
Listen, 81 receptions, 8 touchdowns. I hope he does better than he's been doing. But Josh Doxson, congratulations on the money bags. Moving on to a position room that I really think we should talk about. And this was a take that I had given to you guys before the show started. Is this the worst tight end room in the league? To me, it feels like it is. I mean, you look at the guys who they were throwing out there. We cut Samus Reyes, R.I.P. He deserves a spot in this league.
Rip.
Chilean international player. We were playing Rodgers a lot in preseason. He looked all right, although his pass blocking was subject. Curtis Hodges, a guy from Arizona State, forks up. I'm an ASU student.
Of course.
He was a guy that looked like he was going to get a little bit of time here and there, and then you haven't really seen him too much. So I'm wondering what your guys' takes are. I mean, obviously Logan Thomas injured and John Bates injured, but what do you think?
And Cole Turner injured as well. Our fourth rounder, another tight end that we drafted in the 4th round back-to-back years. I think John Bates, that 4th round pick last year, turned out not so bad, but saying that's the worst in the league is certainly a take. But again, we didn't get to see our top 3 guys this preseason. They were all injured. So is it, I don't know that it's fair to say that we're the worst tight end group.
Without Logan Thomas, you very well might be the worst. And that's no knock on John Bates, because I actually do like John Bates a lot. I think he did more than what we expected of him. And I think, for a guy who's primarily a blocking tight end, I think he's got all right hands, like decent hands. Cole Turner, it's a shame we haven't been able to see him at all, but he could be a real, actual piece for us in terms of more receiving target. I think without Logan Thomas, you might be the worst in the league just because there's no one notable there with real experience besides John Bates, and I would argue that his experience is still very limited.
He's only a second-year player.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do like what I saw at Amani Rogers. I think he makes this team, actually, just given the injury uncertainty there. I think he has a roster spot. I think you see Curtis Hodges go to the practice squad. He's a little banged up now, but I think they like what they see in that undrafted rookie as well. And then you might even have another guy sneak on to the tight end. I mean, to the practice squad there as a tight end. I don't know who that would be. I know Eli Wolf was a guy in the last one of the preseason games. I don't think the last one. I think he got hurt though as well. So that room is totally banged up. It's been a ton of musical chairs action for those guys there. But I actually think when healthy that this group is actually not a detractor from this offense and maybe even a slight positive. I think if you have everyone healthy, I think it's a good group.
Yeah.
Can I offer an interesting wrench that could be thrown into the works here? OJ Howard, former, I believe, first-round pick, possibly second-round pick of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a few years ago.
Roll Tide. 6'6"
tight end out of Alabama. Been playing under Gronkowski for the Super Bowl years, obviously. Was there for the Jameis Winston years. Didn't really develop, but is still a guy with a lot of raw talent. I mean, what do we think about that? He's on the Bills now, and there are rumors that he could be heading towards the trade block as the 53-man roster cuts begin to happen. Do we like the idea of a guy like OJ Howard coming into the room?
I mean, I don't know that they do that. I mean, I think he's a talented player, but we haven't even gotten to see Turner play at all. And the one thing that I'll speak to about this tight end room is I think that our tight ends are going to be a lot more important to this offense than anyone would have thought. Carson Wentz, when he was in Philly, his top target was always Zach Ertz. He always threw to Zach Ertz. There's really no notable receivers that had big stats with Carson while he was there. I mean, Terry's going to be the best receiver he's ever played with. I think Carson is a guy that loves to throw the tight end. So, having a healthy tight end room, having Logan Thomas back, having those guys is going to be crucial. Do they look for outside help to bring in? I mean, I think that's a question that'll be answered, later in the season if these guys can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I don't think they go out and get any help at this point. I think Rivera's kind of shown he's not quick to go ahead and jump out and get like help the second someone goes down. I think maybe later in the season, if we have problems and really need to dip in to the free agency to find someone, we will. But yeah, I don't think we're in a position to actually make a big trade at this point right before the season or anything like that. I totally agree though, Clark, about the Carson Wentz thing. I think tight end becomes way more important to this offense than it was with Heineke. I think that's why it's great that you see Logan Thomas, taken off the PUP list to start the season. So, he'll take up an active roster spot, even if he's not ready week 1, but that means they like his rehab progression. They like his recovery, which is great because, we really do need a guy like that. We need Logan Thomas in this offense, especially with Carson Wentz.
Man, you just got to hope he can stay healthy. I mean, he had a hard time staying in the field last year as well.
Really.
I guess we got to see some more John Bates season as a result of that.
Yeah, I love John Bates, but hopefully, he's not forced into that number 1 role like he was. I mean, there's no Ricky Seals-Jones this year too. I mean, that's your notable departure for this group is you don't have another kind of veteran guy you can kind of lean on to take the reins with an injury pops up.
True. I mean, that made national headlines with, Ricky Seals-Jones not coming back.
He had that one good catch. He had that one nice touchdown catch for that one game.
Never forget.
Offensive line, obviously, I feel like we've, in the past few years, seen a lot of inconsistency. It feels like that inconsistency carried over this year. Any notes you boys have on the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same story as it's been with tight end. I mean, there's been a lot of minor injuries so far this preseason, and there's definitely like a depth concern there. I think when healthy, this is again a really good unit. I think I believe his name is John Matsko is the O-line coach. I've heard, many reporters, many analysts just, heap praises on him, and I think it's because he does a good job with the cards he's dealt. Um, we've had a lot of, like you kind of alluded to, plug and play action with our O line due to injuries over these last 2 seasons at least, and I think been overall pretty solid. I mean, I like, there's a lot of veterans on this line, especially now. I mean, pretty much everyone besides Cosme in terms of starters is a veteran. Um, but so I think when healthy, the line's good. I mean, Chase Rouillet, very, very good center, top 10 center easily. Charles Leno, probably top half of the league in tackles, or maybe middle of the pack. I guess real big question mark is if Norwell and Trey Turner are good, or if they're just Comanther retreads or not. I do miss Eric Flowers. I did like Eric Flowers a lot as a guard, and obviously losing Scherf.
Yeah, he really turned his career around. Joined us back in 19, got a bag from Dolphins. We traded back for him last year.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he turned himself into a pretty good player after kind of becoming a meme. His first few years of the Giants. But like you said,
don't forget to shout. I need to make this shout out very quickly, or else one of our close and dear friends, Clark, would hate us. Shout out Chris Paul, left guard, backup from Tulsa. Really, doing the name proud out there, honestly.
Yeah, he's probably like the best athlete named Chris Paul out there. So shout out him.
Fun fact for you, he is the taller of the Chris Pauls.
That is a rather fun fact. He also has the same amount of rings as Chris Paul. Anyways, no disrespect to Chris Paul, but
which one?
Both.
But like you were saying, Chris, those Commanthers, as it is, a lot of guys, that has been a theme with this team ever since Rivera took over. Seems like anybody that we bring in is like one of Ron's guys, which, when you're trying to build a program, it's good to have guys that know your system coming in. But at the same time, let's talk about this. When was the last time Rivera, had to put a winning product on the field? Seems like a long time ago they went to that Super Bowl. And yes, it's okay to bring in, the guys that you trust and the guys that know your offense, but, and not to say, I think Turner and Norwell are two good players. They may be, they're definitely veterans. Are their best years behind them, to be seen. But again, the whole idea that we are the Commanthers has kind of been a trend ever since Ron took over. And I don't necessarily know that now coming into year 3, are we still going to be relying on these kind of Panther retread guys? I mean,
well, the good news is you have, you got Wes Schweitzer as your primary backup for the interior 3, who I love. I think he could start on a lot of teams and probably start on our team, and probably will be, honestly, because they're, if there's any injuries to that front 3, or if he's just simply better than Turner. And then you got good old Corin Lucas, as the swing tackle. So I really like the depth, and obviously Sadiq Charles, Chris Paul, as you mentioned, could be good depth for us. Keith Ishmael, Tyler Larson, who could come back. He's injured. But I think this is a solid unit. Hopefully that they can just stay healthy.
Yeah, I was taking a quick look over here at Ron Rivera's record. The last time he had a winning record was 2017. That was an 11-5 season.
5-6 years ago.
Exactly. Now you look at that team and you see some connections. Obviously Trey Turner was with the Panthers at the time, and I believe Curtis Samuel was a freshman or not a freshman, a rookie his first year with the Panthers in 2017. Although I might be a year or two off on that. I think this is really a make or break year for Ron Rivera. If he doesn't come out of this season looking looking like he's improving the team in some way, it might be time to move on. And that's a hard thing for me to say as a guy who really, enjoyed the story of him and really thought that he added something to this team that we hadn't seen since Sean McVay was offensive coordinator. I mean, there hasn't been any hope from the coaching staff. I mean, there was that funny. It was a meme, but it was also just stating facts. We at one point had Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur on our coaching staff,
and Kyle Shanahan.
And Kyle. Well, I have issues with Kyle Shanahan, but I'll give him his credit. And Kyle Shanahan. And you look at it now, and we have what, Ron Rivera and who? I mean, you brought up Matsko. That was a great call out there, Chris. But I mean, I can't name any of the coaches to you.
Del Rio.
Besides, do not get me started on Jack Zone Blitz Del Rio. I mean, one of my notes, Clark, you made a note about it too. He uses the zone blitz as if it was a 4-3 defense. He will send a cornerback after the quarterback. That is, you can do that one or two plays a game and try and use it as, a tendency breaker, or just try to catch them on the back foot, blah, blah, blah. There is no reason to be sending Benjamin St-Juste into the fire like this. He is not a defensive end. He is not an outside linebacker. He is a slot corner or regular outside cornerback at best.
Well, every once in a while, it's okay, to spice things up, but I don't anticipate them making Benjamin St-Juste into, the next Brian Arakpo or something like that. But when you've got a defensive line that's supposed to be as highly touted as it is, I don't think you would be blitzing as much as, maybe we've seen a little bit in preseason. And yes, Chase Young is injured, and we're not sure exactly when he's set to return. But I think the forefront of this defense obviously is the defensive line. And they've got to be the ones to first and foremost get the pressure.
Yeah, definitely good segue into talking about, the defense. And I think certainly Jack and Ron don't do they certainly don't try to hide the fact that we're basically a 4-2-5 defense 95% of the time, it seems like. But back to on the St-Juste point real quick. I don't think that. Yeah, you're going to see St-Juste, yes, in three corner situations, but you're not going to see St-Juste in the situation where you're going to have that Buffalo nickel, maybe coming in to blitz a bunch. I think they're going to switch that guy out. It might be Juice a couple times, but I think you're going to see, Derek Forrest in there. You might see Percy Butler in there. You might see, you might even see like, you could see Corn Elder in there if he makes this team / is healthy.
Rank that name on a scale of 1 to 10. I'll give you my quick reaction. I give it a 9.2.
It's up there.
Corn Elder?
Corn Elder. What do you give it on a scale of 1 to 10? I give it a 9.2.
In terms of just name, I mean, it's a great name. It's a great name.
Scale of 1 to 10.
It's a great name. It's at least an 8 out of 10 name. It's a good name. Now, in terms of, he's probably fighting to be that fifth cornerback, / that fifth cornerback spot. I don't even think there'll be 6. I think there's probably going to be 5. And so he's probably fighting for that spot right there against like Christian Holmes, if I'm being honest. I don't know who will win. I know Corn got kind of banged up in that second preseason game.
Let's not
Yeah,
forget
but-
he's also not the only guy named Corn on this roster.
Corn Lucas is arguably the more valuable corn in my eyes. But
Corn Talk, our next segue.
yeah, corn talk.
Newest segment on the Going Commando podcast. We
Yeah.
just talk about both guys named
Well,
Corn.
let me move from one good name to another good name. A guy that I think we could see playing a lot of snaps in the future of the team. Fedarian Mathis.
Solid name.
Scale of 1 to 10.
Another good name.
Scale of 1 to 10. What are we giving it?
I mean, all you need to know about this guy is that his name's Fedarian Mathis, and he's joining the trend of Washington defensive tackles from the University of Alabama. So you
Roll
already
Tide.
know that this guy
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide indeed. I mean, and you just know that this guy is going to fit in that group. You know, especially with the losses of Tim Settle and Ioannidis, who are two very good plug-in third kind of defensive tackle guys. Bringing in Fedarian Mathis, I think, is going to be a big piece, and he definitely has played well this preseason.
Now, Clark, would you happen to be high on any other defensive tackles on this team, possibly?
Well, there's always going to be a special place in my heart for David Bada, of course, the German pathway prospect. We'll see if he ends up making the team. I mean, we could talk about Jonathan Allen, you know, forever. I mean, that guy is really coming into his own. Had made his first Pro Bowl. He's the leader of that defense. But the real big storyline with that group, of course, is going to be Payne, who's coming into a contract year this year. They just paid Allen. I mean, what do you guys think? Does drafting Mathis kind of tell us that he's on his way out, or is he going to really have a great year this year because he's on a contract year? I mean,
That's tough. That's tough because Mathis was needed regardless because of the loss of Ioannidis and Settle. I honestly like Payne. I mean, I think he's no Jonathan Allen. I mean, Jonathan Allen, you get more than you bargain for, even with a first round pick, because he's an excellent leader, a good face of the franchise. He'll sell jerseys for you. He's Pro Bowl quality talent. I think Deron Payne is up there too in terms of near elite talent. It's just a matter of, can we pay him? Are we able to give him a contract that he feels like he's valued at? Does he want to stay on this team? Is he willing to take, not necessarily top dollar deal to stay on this team? Does he give a shit about that kind of stuff? I don't know. With him, he's kind of hard to read. He doesn't really talk to the media that much when he is up there. So I think, I don't expect any drop off of play from Deron. If anything, I expect him to have an even better year than we've seen from him in the past, because he's on a contract year and there is that uncertainty there for him as well. I'm sure he wants to play well. So if things don't work out here, he can go get paid somewhere else. So I expect good things out of Deron Payne this year, whether he's here or not next year. I don't know. Glad to see that we have Fedarian Mathis. Hopefully he can grow in and get some good reps, good quality time this year, and show that he's ready to take that role if he's forced into it. And then I think that there's obviously going to be a fourth D tackle spot on this team. I think that could go to our boy David Bada. I think most likely it goes to Daniel Wise, who they're high on. He's played well this preseason. He came in at the end of last year when we were kind of short on guys, and got some meaningful snaps. So you got him. But there's a couple other guys. It's a large kind of room, that whole D line room right now, with a lot of names and kind of guys that may or may not make the team based on just how many guys they keep at each position.
I look at this defensive line, and obviously every single game that we watch will tell you that defensive line is where the potential is. That defensive line has the most potential in the league. That defensive line, blah, 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 blah. This defensive line stops and ends with three guys: Chase Young, Deron Payne, and Jonathan Allen. Now, whether we want to believe Montez Sweat is that fourth guy or not, it's up in the air for me. I think that he's a talented guy, but he needs to really show his colors in these next, in this next season, honestly, in my opinion, although some people would give him a bit more time.
With Chase Young out, man, I think it's going to be big for him to kind of step up and be that edge rusher.
I think Montez is arguably better than Chase. I mean, I think he's more productive. And I think that, I think if he can just stay healthy, hopefully he has no more, personal family issues or whatnot. Like I hope, he's able to stay on the field for us. And if he can, I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. I think he wants to really shine, especially in Chase's absence. I think we have to worry about, James Smith-Williams over there on the other end. I think we have to worry about a significant drop off in play there because I really don't. I'm not a huge fan of our DN depth. I like our D tackle depth in Fedarian Mathis and Daniel Wise. I really don't love our DN depth, really.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Shaka Toney kind of cost us that first preseason game down the stretch with some kind of dumb penalties. And he's a guy that was around last year, but haven't seen much from him. And I mean, you said it with Chase Young out. I mean, not only is Montez Sweat, we're going to expect him to step up big time to kind of get that edge pressure, but I mean, something's got to give. Like somebody's going to have to do something on that other side, whether it's James Smith-Williams or one of these other depth guys. It's really unproven on that side. You got to hope that the other studs on that D line can kind of make up for, potentially a hole there at that other DN spot.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much, not too many people, that could do that for you. You got, James Smith-Williams, who it's probably going to be, but then, those guys are going to have, especially because Chase Young's out the first 4 weeks, at least, if not more, there's going to be times when Montez and James Smith-Williams needed, a breather. So who's going to go in there? It's going to be Casey Toohill. It's going to be F.A. Obata, maybe. It's going to be Shaka Toney, William Bradley King, Bunmi Rotimi. These guys don't necessarily instill confidence in me that they can go and get it done. And which is why I would love to have Kerrigan back in. I'm glad to have Kerrigan back. I would like him to be in a uniform.
Be nice.
That'd be dope, but we don't have that. So yeah, I really think that I think James Williams needs to show that he's starter, semi-starter quality. Because if not, they're just gonna run to whichever side James Smith-Williams is on, and you'll have success.
Yeah, I think when you look at this defense, the defensive line isn't anything to really stress out about. I agree that the depth is a little bit concerning, but we just gotta hope guys step up, and if they don't, that's why they're in the back. That's why they're in the front. I think we look at guys like Jamin Davis and Cole Holcomb to have big years, and I think we see David Mayo at the wide linebacker spot, and kind of wonder what he's doing there. But
love that.
He himself is a Commander.
I think basically at the end of the day, what it comes down to is that we are hoping that this defense can step it up. I mean, 2 years ago, we're one of the best defenses in the league. Chase Young gets injured last year during what was already a rough year, and it turns into even a rougher year. So we just got to recover.
I totally agree. And Del Rio doesn't have a good answer for it. When asked about it, he's he doesn't even really even know what to say. So that doesn't instill confidence in me. Just our guys got to, they know what to do. They just got to execute. I mean, that's not a good answer as to why you went from top 5 defense to, bottom, 25 defense or whatever. I agree. I think it's very critical year for Cole Holcomb and Jamin Davis. Those guys both need to stay healthy and play their asses off. Because there's a huge drop off after that. And I think Jamin Davis is still very unproven in the first place. David Mayo, serviceable veteran, I'm not huge on him, but he's making this team clearly. Khaleke Hudson will make this team as a primarily special teams guy, but he'll probably get snaps just out of necessity. And then it's really just complete no names after that won't make this team, most likely. So yeah, linebacker is a huge concern, especially if there's any injuries.
And it's a position group that I think a lot of fans really wanted them to address this offseason, whether that came through the draft or free agency, and it just wasn't the case. We're bringing back the same group of linebackers in what was arguably our weakest position group in the entire team
Mm-hmm.
last year. So they're really expecting Jamin Davis to make another leap. Cole Holcomb, I would say he's proven to be a starter. Um, he's kind of one of the leaders of that defense, play caller and whatnot. But again, we spent that first round pick previous year on Jamin Davis, maybe had a bit of a shaky first year. And really, again, he's unproven. He's going to have to show us something, show us why he was worthy of that first round pick. Because for what I've seen thus far, it seems like he's a quick, talented guy, but I feel that he gets beat off the ball a lot and, has trouble shedding blocks downfield.
No, I agree, and I think and one of the first things I thought about Jeremy Davis when he was coming out of the draft was that he's a real instinctual guy, and I didn't know how that would play out in the NFL, and it's kind of played out the way that most people saw it happening, which was he's a playmaker, but how much of a playmaker was he really? I mean, you talk about 70 tackles out of a rookie. That's good. Then you remember that he was supposed to be our strong side linebacker and that he played in the middle of the field and he was getting washed down on blocks. And you start to look at the film and you say, well, this guy really didn't perform to what we expected him to. So just an overall interesting situation there. Now, obviously, getting into the deeper secondary, you look at Kendall Fuller, Cameron Curl, Bobby McCain, and William Jackson III being our slated starters, with Benjamin St. Juice, Derek Forrest, Percy Butler, and Christian Holmes kind of being moved around in that fifth spot. And, it looks like an improvement. It looks like an improvement. Now, is it? Time will tell, but that secondary has always been suspect. I mean, you know me, Clark. I've texted you and I've said this many times to your face. That secondary is our biggest issue at times.
Just going to say it does seem to be the case. It's kind of a theme throughout the years. I feel like I've described many Washington defenses as Swiss cheese. It seems like
Sounds about
a
right.
lot of guys, we always kind of get carved up, it seems, except, of course, that one season. But when you look at the guys that we do have on this roster, Kendall Fuller, he won a Super Bowl
He's
with
good.
Kansas City. He's a good player. I mean, he started his career off with us. We shipped him to Kansas City. He won a ring. He came back, and he's pretty good. We signed William Jackson last offseason as well. I think he's still a guy that's a above average starter in this league. Do I think he's an elite lockdown cornerback? No, but I think that having two guys that are above average, serviceable, good players should lead you to some success. But yeah,
Yeah. I need to see more out of William Jackson III this year. I get it. Your first year in a system, you're expected to come in, start, and do a lot, play almost every snap. Like, I get it. He needs to really step it up this year. There's no really an excuse this year. He needs to play well, and I think he can. Like you said, I think he's totally capable of that. Kendall Fuller, I love. St. Juice, I really hope can actually materialize and be kind of that third guy for us. I think the fourth guy is actually going to be Danny Johnson, mainly just out of familiarity and veteran, presence. Just because I'm concerned with the corner depth. I think safety overall is a position I feel much better about. I think once you get past St. Juice, there's really, it's Danny Johnson, Corn Elder, and Christian Holmes are your top three guys after that. And two of those guys, two of those three names will make the team out of necessity. So, I don't love the cornerback group once you get past, especially really once you get past the first two. I really don't love it. I do like St. Juice, but he's so unproven. With safety, I love Cam Curl. I like Bobby McCain. I've come around to Bobby McCain a lot, especially towards the back end of the season. I like what he can do for us. Derek Forrest is, I've heard people, they've said he's had a good camp. So I'm optimistic about him. I feel like he'll become kind of the next DeShazer Everett. just because, obviously no more DeShazer Everett and
Man.
Landon Collins to that matter as well. He's a very notable departure in this position group as well. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about, safety and whatnot. But I also think I got to shout out Jeremy Reeves. I love Jeremy Reeves. Big Jeremy Reeves proponent each year. I've been happy he's been able to hang on. And maybe this is the year he actually gets on active roster. I think there's a path for him to make it week 1. And I think he's had a good preseason, honestly. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he played well in spots. He got some time during some of those COVID games.
He got time during the COVID games and, some time back into last year. And he's had a good camp as well.
I think that the one guy that is really just going to need to play well continually is Cam Curl, who, he had a really good rookie year. He was a 7th round pick, came out of nowhere. But since then, I mean, I don't know. I feel he's a good hitter, but I question his kind of like playmaking ability and his coverage ability. No, not playmaking ability. I've seen that guy make plays that jump off the board, but I don't know. So I'm not completely sold on Cam Curl still to this day, even though he was proven himself to be the starting safety for this team. But I don't know. I'm not completely sold on his
but
ability.
Is he just so you're saying, is he just like hopefully he's not just like a Brandon Merriweather, like DJ Swearinger, like hits hard, but like can't actually cover that well.
That's what I fear could be his destiny. I mean, I don't know.
Hard for me to say anything about these safeties that is necessarily negative. I mean, I agree with the Cam Curl unproven thing. The funny thing that I did when I was thinking about the safety rooms, I rewatched. I don't know if you'll remember this. If you're a true Commanders fan for the past few years, and you'll definitely remember this if you watched every game. There was a punt return by Darren Sproles in Philadelphia, which the Gunners were DeShazer Everett and I think Trey Quinn at this point. Well, don't quote me on the second gunner. And DeShazer Everett threw what might have been one of the nastiest, possibly most illegal hits I've ever seen of all time on Darren Sproles. Really just, if you have a chance, listen to that first.
He did hit hard.
Listen to that hit without any, without looking at the screen. Close your eyes and just listen to the hit. And then watch it. And that's what I think you get with Cameron Curl. It's a guy that has really good pop. He's a zone guy. He doesn't really play much man-to-man, although when he does, he kind of, has his weaknesses exposed here and there. Bobby McCain, I know that some of you guys aren't a big fan of him. He's a good veteran presence. He comes from a Miami that went through some hard times, and hopefully he can, bring some of that leadership and some of that experience to our locker room and keep us from going, into a Miami Dolphins direction. Now, one special teams thing I'd like to point out before we move on to just the, general wrap up and questions. Cameron Cheeseman is our long snapper. 2021 6th round pick, maybe 7th round. I'm not 100% on the round, but I know it's 6th or 7th. What do you foresee for him in the future? Do you think he stays as our long snapper? Do you think we bring in some competition for him? I mean, what really happens to Cameron Cheeseman on this roster?
I mean, I forever will be a Nick Sundberg supporter. That guy was with us for so long. He's a great guy in the community. I can't ever really remember too many times where a snap didn't go as it was supposed to with Nick Sundberg. Cheeseman, he's a young guy. As long as he gets that ball where it needs to be, man, like have at it. And I must say he's one of the better names in the NFL.
Yeah, in terms of names, he's got a good one, and that's definitely up there. I got nothing against Cheese. I never knew. I didn't understand why Rivera moved on from Nicky Sons. If he was good to go, I was fine with keeping him. He was a long time Redskins holdover. So I always got a place in my heart for those old veterans that just are with us for so long.
Shout out Kedrick Golston.
Shout out, yeah, and shout out, all the old veterans. We got Kerrigan back as a coach now, kind of, which is great. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Well, Tom, what are you?
I look at a guy like Cheeseman, and I think back to our great long snappers, like of course Sundberg. But how about Lawrence Ethan Albright, nicknamed the Red Snapper, played for us from 2001 to 2009, and was a Pro Bowler during that time. I see a lot of comparisons there. 6'5", 248 long snapper in Albright. In Cheeseman, I believe you have comparable measurements. But, I could really see him getting into the Pro Bowl within the next few years with his snaps.
Yeah, I mean, don't look now, folks. We kind of got like a long snapper dynasty brewing here in Washington. So,
True. You come in here and you play for 10 years minimum.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about winning titles, or Green Bay, went from Favre to Rodgers, but I mean, I think the real storyline here is, if you want to have success at the long snapper position, you come to Washington.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if there's one thing you leave, after listening to this today, it's that when you think about Washington, you think about long snapper longevity.
Now, just a general wrap-up question for you guys. These are a few questions that I had thought of, which, I think they could be interesting for us to answer. So my first one that I'll throw out to you boys is, which commander are you taking for fantasy that is not named Terry McLaurin?
Joey Sly, because we'll probably be kicking a lot.
It's not a bad answer.
Nihilistic answer there, but I have to respect it.
I think that Curtis Samuel is going to be a guy that we could see a bit of a bounce back season from, if he stays healthy. And that's a big if, because he dealt with several different injury concerns last year. But not only is he going to be a receiver on the outside, we know that Scott Turner isn't afraid to use him as kind of a gadget guy. So if he stays healthy, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be getting lots of targets, and not just targets, but lots of touches every game. So I do think that Curtis Samuel could be kind of a sleeper guy for all you fantasy heads out there.
Now, see, I was able to cheat a little bit here. I play in a fantasy league in which you take one defensive player as well. And my choice would then be Cole Holcomb, just purely based off the fact that he's a tackle guy. He always seems to fill up the box score in one way or another. Now, going with skill positions, I really decided to think, you know what? I'm going to say it. Dotson has a real chance to solidify himself as the number 2 guy this year, and I think he does it. You talk about a new quarterback, a guy that has no real, feelings one type of way or another towards any of the guys. I mean, obviously, McLaurin is going to be the number 1. And you would say 2 should be Curtis Samuel. Well, I would argue Dotson has the best chance at solidifying himself as the number 2 this year if he's going to. So that was my thought on the matter. Now, another question I had for you guys that I feel like is a pretty important one for us. On a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable are you with Carson Wentz as starting QB? And let me offer my opinion first here. I would give it a 7. I'd say injury is definitely what's dropping it down to a 7 for me. If you look at his career numbers, he's been efficient, not necessarily a big turnover guy outside of interception or outside of fumbles. Really good with keeping the ball in the right places. Now, you talk about the receiving core earlier on. That is a big thing for him. I think that really plays into his hands. Now, the running back concerns, along with inconsistent line play, drops it down to a 7 for me as well. And I think overall, 7 is just above comfortable enough to let him play starter. and just below belief that he's going to be, a guy that we talk about when it comes to Pro Bowl.
I think 7 is probably a pretty good number there. I mean, he shows you flashes of greatness at times. He shows you why he was drafted with that number 2 selection by Philly. He's a guy with talent, but my main concern is not as much his play, but his decision making, especially in the crucial moments. I mean, everybody talks about that Week 18 game against Jacksonville, which of course can't be overlooked. You lose to the worst team in the league in a win and in situation, but he also threw a couple other kind of untimely picks or had some untimely plays towards the end of games for Indy last year as well. He threw a goal line pick 6 against the Titans in a situation where they needed to score. He oftentimes would switch the ball from his right hand to his left hand to try to get rid of the ball, which resulted in a turnover week 2 against the Rams in a game that I was at in Indianapolis. It's just this guy's decision making. I mean, just calm down, man. Like, it's not that serious. Just make the right throws, and you'll lead this team to some wins.
Yeah, I'm probably I'll go with a 5. Just because I think he's obviously shown that he can be like a great quarterback in the past, and definitely in terms of athletic and arm strength and ability to physically do it. He has all of that. I think there's just there's a decision making problem. I think there's a problem with being able to shake off mistakes and have kind of like next play mentality with him. I think that's been a problem. That could potentially continue. I hope not. I think a lot of his success is going to come down to, is Logan Thomas healthy and performing at a high level, and can they establish that chemistry and connection? I think there is a scenario where you see, Logan Thomas absolutely popping off. That's why I snagged him, late in my fantasy draft yesterday. Because I think if he's healthy, he could be like literally Carson Wentz's number 1 guy and kind of be like the Zach Ertz for Carson Wentz. But so I think there's a couple of things that play into Carson Wentz's success, but overall I'd give it a 5. I'm not too high on him, but again, I it's just mainly because I don't want to disappoint myself.
No, absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. And I think that just really speaks to the fact that I think if it was a guy like Heineke and you asked me the same question, I'd give you a 3 because I have no clue whether we're going out there to win or not when he's out there. I don't know. And what I think should be our last segment here, we have the record predictions for all 3 of us. Now, boys, I'm going to tell you the team. We are each going to give our opinion. Can be short, can be long, up to you. Whether we win or lose this game, we will go game by game. At the end of the time, I will tally up the wins and losses and give you our record predictions. Okay?
Let's do it.
Sounds good.
Now, week 1, Carson Wentz returns to Jacksonville to get revenge for the week 18 bludgeoning by the Jaguars. Clark, where do you see this one going?
Week 1, first game of the season. Many of us will be in attendance. This is a Carson Wentz revenge game. Commanders get the win.
Interesting. Chris?
We need this to be a win. So yeah, we hope this is a win. If this isn't a win, this is not the greatest start.
Yeah, I look at that Jaguars team. I see a lot of holes still, a lot of question marks, and I see our team, and I think that we have a few less question marks and definitely a lot less holes. So, you know what? I'm going to give us all a win. We're all saying win to start out the year, which is a great start. Now, week 2, we head to Detroit. Actually, I'm not sure if we head to Detroit, but we head
to Detroit.
We do indeed head to Detroit. You are right, Clark. To face a Lions team led by Dan Campbell, obviously the feature face of Hard Knocks this year. really tough team, really young team, trying to build their identity. Clark, where do you see this one going?
I think that while many, have been trying to say the Jaguars game is the trap game, this is the real trap game. These are our first 2 weeks were the last teams in the NFL last season, number 1 and number 2 pick. But the Lions did kind of play some teams close last year, including that tie against Pittsburgh. I mean, I think that this is a game that we should win, and I'm going to mark it as a win, but I wouldn't be surprised to see us drop this one.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, same here. I mean, I'm going to put this as a W because it honestly needs to be a W for us. I might be biased with these with these wins losses, but yeah, this needs to be a W for us if we want to be legitimate this season.
Yeah, I think, Clark, you're absolutely right. This looks like a trap game on paper to me. A team which not a lot of people expect much out of, but also had a much better year than people realize. I think they're still trying to answer a lot of questions in terms of what's their actual, what does their team do? Are they a passing team? Are they a running team? Does DeAndre Swift really pick it up in his years? Does he really separate himself from Jamal Williams? I give this one as a W to us. Now, obviously, do I think it's a close win? Absolutely. If this is decided by more than 3 points, I will be shocked. Week 3 going to the Eagles. Clark, what do you think? Where do you have this one as?
So we'll be hosting the Eagles in this game, which, if you know FedEx Field, how much of a home field advantage is that really going to be? I think the Eagles are looking pretty good, and I'm not sure that we pick up this win here. I'd say we take a loss to the Eagles in our first matchup with them.
Interesting. Chris?
I'll say we take this win. I'll say we take the dub over the Eagles early. They come in with a chip on their shoulder, probably 2-0 as well, and we beat them.
Interesting. I concur with Chris actually on this one. I think the Eagles come in riding a little bit of a hot hand. Think they're a little bit too good than they really are, and we kind of surprise them. Now, week 4 we play the Cowboys, back-to-back division rivals. Clark, where do you see this one going?
In Dallas, I mean, that Cowboys team, they've got playmakers all over their defense. Their offense is a little bit more shaky this year. They lost some guys. I'm going to say that we lose this game to Dallas in Dallas.
Chris?
Yeah, in Dallas, that's an L.
Fair enough. I have the same thing. I think just, we don't play the Cowboys really well early on. We kind of adjust to them better in the second half of the season. That might be a hint towards later on in the schedule, but we'll see. I give this one as a loss in Dallas. Week 5, we have the Titans. Tough team. Definitely looking like playoff contenders. Clark, where do you see this one going?
I think that the biggest question will be with this team is how long Ryan Tannehill can keep that starting job, because Malik Willis was kind of on fire in preseason. And, they lost some big weapons on offense. People forget they were the number 1 seed in the AFC a season ago, but I don't really like Tennessee this year, and we've got the defensive line tools to stop Henry. So I actually do think that the Commanders will win this game.
Interesting. Chris?
I'm going to give that a win for us actually as well. I'm hoping for a season where Derrick Henry, I'm not hoping for it because I like the guy, but I'm hoping he, just doesn't bounce back as well as, some people are predicting. And I just, I think that's another game where if we really want to be competitive this year, we need to win.
Yeah, and I see you guys' points here. I have it as a loss on the schedule. I just think that our depth at every defensive position isn't enough to take those 3 to 4 quarters of just pure grinding by Derrick Henry and the Titans. I have it as a loss, but maybe we make it up on the back end. Now, next week we have the Bears. Not too sure how to feel about this one. Clark, how you feeling?
Primetime game in Chicago. They've got a new coach new system in place, Justin Fields' second year. But I mean, can any of you name a receiver on that team outside of Darnell Mooney?
Ooh, you took the one.
Definitely not.
You took the one I was going to name.
And with that being said, I think that we go in Chicago and win
Dontrell
that
Inman?
game. No way. Is he really?
Dontrell Inman
No.
might
Ah.
actually be on that team.
You got my hopes up there.
Do you have that as a win, though?
Yeah, that's a win.
All right, Chris, you?
That's a win.
Fair enough. Equally said. I like Justin Fields. I think that team is definitely working towards something. I have it as a win. I don't see the Bears pulling it out on us as easily as people think they might. Packers after Bears. I mean, do we need to say much here, Clark?
I don't think we do. We actually played them pretty close this past season, and they have some questions at the receiver this year, but I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
It's the Commanders. We're gonna lose this game.
Romeo Dobbs. Don't forget the name.
See, I actually might switch my Titans to an L and have this be a dub. I might be crazy, but is it Rodgers that I'm thinking about that can't beat us at FedEx?
It's possible. We did have that win over them with Kirk Cousins. Is the Fat Rob game?
Yeah,
You guys remember that?
I feel like there's some sort of thing out. I mean, I could be totally wrong. So whoever
We beat him with
correct
Alex
me if
Smith
I'm wrong.
in 19 as well.
Right. So I think there's a thing. There's a legitimate thing where Rodgers for some reason can't seal the deal at FedEx recently. So I'm gonna say we lose to the Titans a couple weeks back, and we actually win this game.
Okay. Interesting. I have it as a loss. I've learned a long time ago, never doubt that man. And Aaron Rodgers is that man. So now we move on to the real interesting game, the Carson Wentz revenge game against the Indianapolis Colts. Clark, as an Indianapolis native, how would you see this one going?
This is a game that I most likely will be going into town for. I'm very excited for it. I think the whole city is going to come out and boo the hell out of Carson Wentz. And to be honest with you, I don't see him as a guy that's going to be able to step up in that kind of moment. So I think that we're going to lose to Indy. I also think that they are kind of a dark horse team this year. They got a really talented roster.
Interesting point. Chris?
Yeah, I think we'll lose. I mean, they got JT. Carson Wentz will probably fold under pressure, and it'll be an L. But good game, hopefully. I'm excited for it.
Now, this is an interesting one because I honestly think, you think about this team last year, a lot of Pro Bowlers, a lot of really talented guys, Jonathan Taylor being that man. I think this might be a win. I think this is the game where Carson Wentz has his season flash. I think that he pulls up. He has a little bit of extra swagger. He has a little bit of FU in him from that building, from the Colts organization, kind of throwing him out to the dogs. And I think that he comes out and wins this game. So that's just me, but we'll see how it goes. Next week after that, we have the Vikings visiting Kirk Cousins and Jay Jettas. Clark, how you see it?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time that Kirk will be back in Washington because we played them, but I'm pretty sure that was in Minnesota when we've played them since he's been on the Vikings. So that is kind of a little mini storyline going on. And you know what? I think that Kirk is gonna, he's not gonna be able to, again, maybe a Carson Wentz situation coming back to Washington might see some butterflies. I think that we're gonna beat the Vikings in this game.
Interesting take, Chris.
Yep, just like how Carson isn't clutch when he comes back, Kurt is not going to be clutch when he comes back. So let's hope that we can give Kurt an L and take the W.
Interesting points. I'm going to be realistic here. I'm going to give this one an L. I think that Vikings team is definitely an underdog. I think that, you look at some of the players that they lost, you say they lost a lot. I think they honestly gained more from their losses. So we'll see. But I have that as a loss for us. Then we move on to our final game of the season against the Eagles in week 10, I believe this is. Clark, how do you see the rematch against the Eagles playing? You had it as a loss for the first game for your awareness.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but I do not see us winning this game either, especially considering number one, this is Carson Wentz's return to Philly. And if you think that his return to Indianapolis is going to be bad, just imagine what it's going to be like when this man steps into Philadelphia, let alone the fact that this game is on Monday Night Football in November football. So I just do not see us winning this game.
Fair enough. Chris?
Agree to all of those points. I think we lose this. I think we're probably, hopefully not, but we're probably more banged up at this point in the season than we are when we play them the first time around. So yeah, I'll say we split with the Eagles and we lose this one.
Understandable. You did give them a win in week 3. I have it as a loss too. All the points you made are very valid, Clark. Also, one thing I like to mention: those Philly fans, they will not be kind to Carson Wentz.
Nope.
So we will see how that ends up. I have it as a loss as well. Moving on, we have the Texans. Big game. Davis Mills, a young guy. This could be the start of when we see Sam Howell coming in if we have a rough year. So, Clark, where do you see this one going?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Davis Mills. I mean, he's got one hell of a neck. Respect. And I actually, all jokes aside, I actually think has a chance to be pretty solid quarterback. But that roster is pretty atrocious, and as a result, we're going to go into Houston and win that game.
Fair enough. Chris?
Yeah, shout out Matt Schaub, but yeah, we win that game.
True.
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to give a kind of random one here. You guys might not remember he played for them. Shout out Ryan Mallett. I think that this is, to most of Clark's points, I think it's, a talented team at certain spots, but definitely has a lot of holes. I think this is a win, but I think it's a close win, honestly. I don't think it's as much of a runaway as some people might expect it to be between these two teams. Now, moving on.
Trap game. Could be a trap game.
Could be.
Absolute trap game potential. Moving on, I see we have the Falcons' new look with Marcus Mariota. Clark, how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I mean, we played this team last season, and it was a much closer game than it should have been. And if the improvements to our team, this late in the season are kind of in full swing, we're not losing this game to Atlanta.
So you have this as a win.
Yes.
Chris, how you see this one?
Well, I think we could see a different quarterback potentially as well, just depending on how Marcus plays, because he could have, Ritter, right? Desmond Ritter, he went there, I believe. So he could be starting. I think that this is actually I hope we win, of course, but I think this is actually a fluke game where we kind of screw up. So I'm going to give us an L here because I think there's going to be at least one game where we should have a pretty easy or solid win where we mess up. I mean, it's pretty signature of us. So
it's inevitable.
I'll say we lose this.
Yeah, I look at this game. I say loss 2. I think our defense doesn't have anyone that can even pretend to cover Kyle Pitts. I think Marcus Mariota does a lot better with that Falcons team than anyone ever expects him to do. And I see this as a loss. Now, whether it's a fluke or not, hard to say, but I'm going to just say it's just a loss flat out. Now, interesting here, I'm gonna bring these two games up at the same time. We have Giants back-to-back weeks, reminding me almost of last season when we had all of our division opponents in kind of the last few weeks there. Clark, how do you see these two games going?
Yeah, I mean, New York Giants have been, us and them have kind of been on the bottom of the NFCs for the last decade, I would say. But last year we did sweep them, and it was also the first time that we had ever beaten Daniel Jones, which is something else that's kind of shocking stat for you. But they just, I don't think they've improved their roster too much. And if Daniel Jones is still the full-time starter, I think we win both of these games.
Win both of them. Interesting. Chris?
I'm going to say we win the first one. Go into the bye week, which is that we have actually in between those two games. And I think we get sloppy, and I think we come off the bye week slow like we have done in the past. And we lose the second game. So I think we split with the Giants. I think we come out and we just honestly lay an egg in the second game.
Absolutely valid point there, Chris. I personally think that this Giants team is dealing with too much adversity. This is a game of overcoming it, and I don't see the Giants as a team that can do that. I mean, you look at Kenny Golladay, he got paid to do basically nothing, and you look at the memes that are going around the NFL landscape right now, and it'll tell you the exact same thing. I see this as 2 wins. I don't see Saquon making as big of a comeback as some people want. I don't think that receiving core is anywhere near ready to be in playoff contention again. I think Brian Dable's first year is going to be a bumpy start, and I think Daniel Jones definitely has to answer some questions. I give it as 2 wins to us. Now, moving on, final 3 games of the year. We start off with the 49ers. Trey Lance has been declared the starter. Jimmy G constructs his contract with the team to be the backup for the year. Clark, how do you see this one going?
This is a team that was one win away from the Super Bowl last year. If Trey Lance pans out to be what they want him to be, he's going to be one heck of a football player. And even if it is Garoppolo, I think either way you slice it, their roster's too talented, then we're going to lose this game.
Interesting. Chris?
Yeah, I'll say we lose the Christmas Eve special.
I think about the last time we played the 49ers, it was horrible weather. I don't know if you remember. It was a close game. It was a close game by all means, but it was horrid weather. People slipping the ball, kind of moving around all. That being said, I think with good weather, the 49ers beat us a bit more handedly. It's an L for me as well.
Don't forget that Chase Young scoop and score a couple years ago.
Very true.
That was that wacky 49ers game that we played in Arizona because of the, all COVID stuff that's going on. But anyways.
Very true. Now we move on to the Cleveland Browns. Week 17. Sorry, I was about to say 16, so used to the old schedule. A lot I could say about this team. Clark, I'm curious as to what you start with.
Cleveland at this point, Deshaun Watson would be playing. Whether or not he comes back and is the same form is another question. But I think that the Browns have a very talented roster as well. They've got some good pieces on offense, and of course, Myles Garrett is just an absolute game wrecker. I think we're going to lose to the Browns in this one.
Interesting, Chris.
This is a tough one.
I'll give you some context, and I'll give you mine while you're making your decision. The Browns, you add Amari Cooper to that team. You already have T. Higgins. You have a running back in Nick Chubb, who looks like to be that guy. You add Deshaun Watson on top of that, who by this point, I mean, if he's back by week 11, then you're looking at him having 4 weeks of experience, 4 to 5 weeks of experience under his belt by this point. I see it as a loss. I mean, it's tough to say, but that team is strong, and I could see them surging towards a playoff spot at this point. I'm giving it as a loss to us.
I will say, if you do add T. Higgins to that team, that goes crazy. But I believe he's still with Joe Burrow.
Who's the other Brown?
Rashard Higgins now with Carolina. Back reunited with Baker, actually. So
really?
That's another spin zone for you.
Ooh, rough take for me today. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna. I really, they do have a lot of talent. I'm not a huge D Watt fan, even just from obviously I'm talking football perspective.
Mm-hmm. He was a great human being off the
field. Great human being off the field, clearly. But
absolute hero and role model, of course. Blah blah blah. We've heard it before. Come on.
Yeah, obviously not. But I'll say that's an L. Sadly, I'm hopeful that they're maybe they're banged up and we're not too banged up at that point, and we can eke out a win. But that prevents me from getting us to double-digit wins. So unfortunately,
big game to finish the season. There is potential that me and my co-host Clark here will be attending with a friend of ours. Cowboys, Week 18. How do we finish the season?
Man, and if that really comes together, that's going to be just one hell of a day. You gotta. I think this game really depends on how we're doing. But what would I be at right now, Tom?
You are currently, according to my math, at 9 and so it's 17 games. So you're 9-7.
Okay, so in all likelihood, this is a win and in situation for the Commanders.
Absolutely.
And
by your schedule, yes. By the way that you have the schedule playing out, yes.
In all likelihood, this is a win and in situation. I have us losing to Dallas in the first game of the season, and I mean, I hate to say it, but I think that I have to chalk up this as an L as well. I mean, I would love to see us have a win and in, crazy week 18 game, but if history tells me anything, it's to never get your hopes up with this team. The fan in me says we're going to win this game, but the realist in me says that we will take an L.
And that finishes you off with a 9-8 predicted record for the year. Possibly good enough for playoffs. Who knows? Chris, how are you finishing off this one? You're at 8-8 currently.
Yep, and I'm gonna, keep things on track here. In terms of overall record, I'm gonna say we win this. Would bring me to 9-8. I think that there's a chance that Dallas has this wrapped up so much that they don't even need to play their starters. So I think there's a chance that we're against their second and third team, and that we are able to win. Get us officially a winning season here with Rivera under our belts. Rivera gets to keep his job. We see Rivera next year, and we get to do all this over again. But I think we get the win there at the end of the season. We have a slightly better record than the past 2 years, just good enough to keep Rivera around and just good enough to, give us a little bit more hope for next year.
Interesting. So you end at 9-8 as well. I am going to give this one as a win to us. I see this as the battle for who's going for the wild card. I think the Cowboys, if they're much more banged up than they are already to start with, I don't know. I mean, I see this as a win. I don't know why. I feel like we close out strong against Dallas. I don't see them as a team that can really finish off that well. That also brings me to 9-8 as a season predicted record. We are all at 9-8. I was looking at the schedule to see how many unanimouses we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games in which we unanimously believe the same thing will happen. We all believe 2-0 start against the Jags and Lions.
Let's hope.
The fourth week 4 against the Cowboys, we all believe is a loss. Prime time against the Bears, we all believe is a win. Second game against the Eagles, we all have as a loss. Texans the next week, we all have as a win. Giants first week, we all have as a win before the bye. 49ers after the Giants the second time around, we all have as a loss, as well as the Browns rounding us out with our 9th consecutive, or not consecutive, but our 9th unanimous decision as a loss. Pretty interesting. I was watching the predictions from the NFL Network. They had us at 10-7 as the average predicted.
Actually surprised to hear that.
The
everyone
Falcons
lowballs us.
I mean, we do have the easiest
really
schedule.
Where things change. I mean, if we believe the Falcons is a win by me and Chris, that puts us at 10-7. So
yeah,
so you heard it here, folks. Hammer the over on the season win loss.
Yeah, I believe it's at like 8.5 right now.
So we're all saying hammer the over, but it's tight.
Not legal gambling advice, but hammer the over.
That's all we've got today in our inaugural episode of the Going Commando Podcast. Be sure to check out the rest of our content as the season progresses and as we approach Week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And as always, guys, HTTR and HTTC.